Hi, everybody. Shannon O'Flaherty here, and I'm talking about the well-known subject called guilt. I'm answering a few people's questions. A few of you have written in asking me about this subject, and I'd like to address it now. So, probably everyone here knows what guilt feels like. I'm sure that as a child you felt guilty, and as a parent you feel guilty, and we can feel guilty pretty much anytime we decide to feel guilty, because it's just about an emotion that is a way that we judge ourselves. We get in our mind a way that we should feel, or should be, or something we should do, or shouldn't, should or shouldn't. But my question is this: who says? Who says? So when we're kids, okay, our parents say, don't do that, you're not allowed to do that. And then inevitably we break the rules. And then we maybe feel guilty because we went against what our parents said. Okay, so that's the parental should. But a lot of times in life, it doesn't come necessarily from our parents. It could be from teachers at school. It could be from an institution. It could be from a religion, the Ten Commandments, for example. So we get all of these ideas, a moral code about what we should and shouldn't do. And if we break the rule or the moral code or the institution's outline of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, then we can feel guilt. And guilt is essentially when we're perceiving how other people are judging our behavior. And then essentially we're just turning that around and judging our own behavior. Okay, so that's how you feel. I remember one day, I was just looking lovingly at my son Forrest, who is now one of the administrators on this group. I don't know if some of you noticed that. And he was, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13. And I was just looking at him lovingly, and he said, "What? What?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Why are you looking at me?" And I said, "I'm just looking at you." And he said, "You make me feel so guilty." And I just started to laugh, and I thought, well, that's completely self-induced, because I was only looking at him lovingly, because I couldn't take my eyes off him, because he was my beautiful son, and just thought, I love him. But because mommy was staring him down, he thought, uh-oh, I'm busted for something. So I kind of had some fun with that. But on the other hand, same kid, because he's the oldest one, so the one that I learned all of the parental lessons with, when he was only 4, I had a piping hot quiche out of the oven that was on a baking tray. And in serving it to him, the quiche slid off the tray and dropped in his lap, my little 4-year-old's lap. And his little face, and he looked up at me, and then he took his hand, of course, and brushed the pie off his hand. And in trying to save the pie, the edge of the pan hit his little ear. So it was a nightmare. I couldn't tell this story for years without bursting out crying, because I had hurt my child, and the guilt I felt was debilitating, because we don't want to hurt our children. And there's my poor kid just trying to have dinner, and he's got his ear burned and his hand burned and his leg burned. Luckily, he's okay. But I was so upset the other kid, Rome, he was locked in a high chair at the time, so at least he couldn't get anywhere. And I ran upstairs with Forrest and put him in a cool bath of cool water. And I was crying so much, so upset that my little 4-year-old child said, "Mummy, it's okay. It's okay. I'm okay." And I felt horrendous. And then I took him to the doctor and he got bandaged. So he had a bandage on his head, he had a bandage on his hand, he had a bandage on his leg. And we're walking through the town. And I'll never forget, okay, this was in Ilkley in West Yorkshire where I raised my kids, okay? And little old ladies walking down the street looking at me and looking at my kid and giving me this, "Oh, what a terrible mother you are." Now, were they really looking at me that way? I have no idea. Does it matter how they're looking at me? No. They could have just been looking at me thinking, "Oh, that poor woman, it must have been so terrible to see her child be wounded." But no, because I was so guilty, I perceived everybody as judging me and saying what a terrible mother I was. So that's one story. You can imagine how it was when I left my husband and moved to Spain without my children, even though I gave them a choice in that. That's early on, one of the early on videos. So I tortured myself with guilt about that for years and years and years and years. And that's because we go inside ourselves and we think, "Oh my God, I'm the most horrible person. I'm going to whip myself, punish myself, and torture myself with guilt," because we have that pit in the core of our stomach that's just eating us alive. Hi, Leslie. Thanks for joining. And so you can't undo the past. If you have done something wrong, we all make mistakes. But if you have done something wrong, for whatever your reasons were at the time, okay, the past is the past. You can't undo it. But what you can change is your present moment right here, right now. You can change how you're going to think and feel about something. How can you, when that guilt is eating you up inside? You think, "Well, who says I need to feel this way? I don't need to feel this way. I can choose to feel a better way." I chalk that up to experience. I used to think, "Well, have I learned from my mistakes? Did I learn from the mistakes I made?" Yes. And what else did I get out of that? What other kind of knowledge? Am I going to make the same mistakes again? Well, sometimes you do, but you learn from every mistake you make. And so you can talk yourself into a better feeling, because guilt is a completely wasted emotion. It doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't change the past. It doesn't fix anything. Nobody gets any satisfaction from it. You don't feel good. Anybody you're trying to make feel guilty, even though you can't make anybody feel a certain way, that's all up to the person, they're not going to feel good either. So guilt is just a silly thing. And so when you feel that pit of despair in your stomach, feeling guilty about something, all you're doing is going over and over and over in your mind, judging yourself and telling yourself over and over how bad you are, that you made this mistake, that you're a terrible person, that you can never forgive yourself. So, hello, you can. So you stop, you breathe, you drink some water, and then you think of something that feels better than guilt. You think of, "Well, actually, I am a good person." And then you start to think about the good things that you do for other people in your life. You start to think about all of the ways that you help people in the world. You start to think about all of the ways that you make a good difference to other people's lives. And you start focusing on those thoughts over and over and over. And guess what? You forgive yourself. You go on up there and you talk to your God, your source, your infinite intelligence. your spiritual guidance and you forgive yourself. I know what it feels like to forgive myself, to have God's unconditional love and forgive myself, because we're all human and we all make mistakes and we need to forgive ourselves and be in a place of gratitude. Be in a place of gratitude for realizing that you're human and make mistakes and that you can forgive yourself. And if you can learn from your mistakes and not repeat them, even better. But if you are making the same mistake over again, okay, that's fine. Maybe you need to make the mistake 10 times before you finally get the message, because every time we make a mistake, it eats us up inside. We don't feel good. We don't feel good about ourselves when we're going against our natural truth and our natural state of alignment and being connected to source. If we're going against who we truly are, we're not going to feel good about that. And all of those times that we're doing that, it's just a message. If you're not feeling good about something, it's because you're not in alignment. And so that's a gift. It's a gift of awareness. If you can tap into that at the moment and realize, oh, hold on a minute, something's not quite right here because I'm not feeling good and because I've got mental torture going on in my head and because I've got this pit in my stomach because of this thing that I did or this thing that I said or that way that I behaved or whatever it is. So guilt, whose is it? Who told you you should feel a certain way? Once I went to see my mother and she started in on me and she said, Shannon, you just don't care what anybody thinks about you. Like as though that was a bad thing. and I started smiling and laughing and clapping my hands and I said, oh yes, I know. I've worked really hard to get to that point. I've worked really hard because for her, in her generation and how she was raised, it's about how everybody else perceives you, how you look to other people. And I said to her, Mom, people can judge me all they like. I'm a really good person. I'm a healer. I help hundreds of people deal with their stuff all the time. All the time. I'm helping people feel better all the time. So people are going to judge me about what? Their stuff. Because we know that when you're judging somebody else, you're pointing the finger at them and you've got 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. You're just judging yourself when you're judging someone else. And so when you perceive that other people are judging you, well, that's just you judging yourself and them judging you about what they're really judging themselves about. I'm pretty sure that just came out how I meant it to. Anyway, I hope you follow my gist with that, because we don't need to be trapped in guilt. It's completely a big waste of time, really. You're just going to make yourself feel very unwell when you have a choice in the matter of how to feel better. Think about all the amazing things you do for people all the time. And if you can't come up with any, that's because you're not thinking hard enough. Whenever you make a phone call, whenever you smile at a stranger on the street, the smallest things can make the hugest difference. It's absolutely true. So remember that you're making a difference to somebody every day, all the time, in a good way. And focus on that all the time. So I hope that's given you some insight into the destructiveness of guilt and how you can choose to feel better about yourself and let go of the guilt. Let go of the guilt. Now, why you have that guilt as a default mode is where the belief work comes in. And that's why working with me will help you identify and find out the roots of where all of this stuff comes from. Because if we can figure out where all of the root issues stemmed from and heal those, then you're going to be free. You're going to be free. You're going to be released from all of this heavy stuff that you're holding on to. Oh, and by the way, Sacred Sunday was yesterday, and I did a video on hate, resentment, and anger. But yesterday was also 999. And it was also the new moon, which is very exciting. And it was also an incredible portal for all sorts of new beginnings and new energy coming in. So if you were having a restless night last night, it could have been because of all of the stuff that was going on in the sky, but also this is a time generally in life for everybody starting a new phase and weeding out the old and healing the wounds from the past so that you can step into the future in a clear way, because the world needs higher consciousness now, which is my whole motivation, to help raise the consciousness and the vibration of the planet faster and higher to cause a ripple effect on the planet. And we can only do that by healing ourselves first, one person at a time. And so please, I want to help you heal. I want to help you have awareness so that then you can be fully in your center and go out there and make a difference for others too. It's an awesome time. So please private message me. Let's find out if we're a good match to work together. And I really look forward to seeing you all. And I'll see you on the next video. Have a lovely day or evening, depending on where you are. Lots of love.